guys who have watched any of my videos on the website or on Sandtray Suite, this is the kind of mastermind behind all those videos that look really, really good. So hey guys, we are here for episode 3 of She Talks with Amy Hood, talking all about business, therapy, and life. So today I have a good friend with me, Bill Jeffery, or as I like to say, Bill Jeff.
Bill Jeff.
Bill Jeff. And so I've known Bill Jeff for, probably a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
Long time we've been working together. And those of you guys who have watched any of my videos on the website or on Sandtray Suite, this is the kind of mastermind behind all those videos that look really, really good. You know, he's the magician that turns my idea into making things look really good. Now, one of the things when we started working together, Bill, you said, "You're cutting out my little creative heart." Do you remember that?
Was that 2017? Like early on?
Early. Because I was like, Bill, we got to get in and get out. And you wanted to do all this extra stuff. And I was like, nope, get in and get out with marketing.
I vaguely remember, but I do remember that I knew nothing about marketing before I met you. So
yes. So
you
tell
kind
us
of, yeah.
So tell us a little your background. You have a married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So married to a therapist. So I know exactly what therapy is and what therapists go through. But I'm just kidding. But
no,
anyways, it's definitely a unique career path and a very hard career path, and I just respect so much like what y'all go through.
Yes.
I think in the last podcast you said something about 40-hour work weeks, but you don't see 40 hours worth of clients. Impossible.
Yes.
Totally.
Well, some people do, but then they end up working like 80 hours.
Yeah.
Because 40 hours of clients still means, and Taylor's his wife, and that's if we talk about Taylor, and then you have a daughter
named Eleanor. She's just finished 3rd grade, and she considers herself a junior therapist.
A junior therapist? Yeah. What makes her a junior therapist?
Well, she's emotionally in tune with herself and her friends' feelings. And when her mom would come to the school and do therapy, when she was working at a little bit of school-based stuff occasionally, it just, Eleanor really looked up to her, and she was really proud to say, that's my mom. And all of Eleanor's little friends who saw her talked to Eleanor too. And so anyways, it's a career aspiration she has. And
I think that's great.
I think she'd be really good at it.
So what is it like, and because I know you may not know because Eleanor's the one you have, and you can't, but do you feel like she gets a different side of things being a daughter of a therapist?
Maybe.
Like more emotional identification and things like that?
I'd like to think so. I'm pretty loose with my emotions and my feelings, and anything I think I usually just pops right off. Taylor needs like a week to process how she feels before she shares. And that's definitely her family's MO. So Eleanor kind of has, maybe best of both worlds or worst of both worlds, however you want to see it. So.
We prefer best of both worlds. So Bill, tell us a little bit about what you do now, because I know you've kind of had a winding career path.
Yeah. So I started out pretty obsessed with movies and stories, and, huge fan of Chris Farley. He's the greatest in my mind. But I just kind of got into. I just loved films growing up, and then I loved storytelling. So when I got right before college started, I had an opportunity to do some different video things, and my friends were getting pretty good at it. So I just kind of fell into it, and then an internship landed into my lap right after college when I moved to Kansas City. And started working for a church. So it was kind of best of both worlds. I was getting to do church work, and I was getting to do communication work. And so that was my full-time job, was doing video stuff. So, and my boss at the time, he was like, "You're probably one of the fastest learners I've ever had." So I got really good and really fast.
Really fast, really good.
Yeah. I was surrounded by experts, like people who did this for a living in Kansas City.
Nice.
They were my volunteers. So I was just learning so much. And then brought it back to Arkansas in 2013. it didn't really have like a direction on it other than people knew I knew how to a camera worked, so they would use me for photography and video stuff. And that's kind of when I met you.
Yes.
And so I was still working at a church, and I think I worked there for probably a year before I left to go work at Williams. But I knew how a camera worked. I knew how stories operate. I knew how to like emotionally engage people, but that was the extent of it. And I thought that's really all you needed.
Right. Well, it's a big base.
It's a huge base, and it's an important base.
Very.
But I really, because I focused on all of that, I really didn't have the desire to focus on logo designs. And so like Adobe Illustrator, that's like the one program I never really wanted to take a stab at learning because it just seems so complex. And video and photography is such a niche skill set that I really do like leaning into that. And now that I'm, my mid-30s, I like having muscle memory so that I can, spend my energy on other fun projects.
Exactly. So you kind of like when Bill Jeffery. So
you can call me
how I know why I call Bill Jeff is my little brother is, I think you're a few years younger than he is, but we're in youth group together.
Yep.
And so he always said Bill Jeff. And so I think, anyway, that's
he may have started that name.
Probably.
He definitely kept it going.
Probably. I'm not surprised. And so that's kind of how I was looking for somebody to help me make my videos look better because back then the iPhones weren't even like now. We're shooting all this on iPhone. And back 10 years ago, that wasn't even a thing.
Everybody knew you were filming on an iPhone if you used an iPhone.
Exactly. And so, Alex said, I think Bill Jeff may know how to do some of this stuff. He does it for the church. And I was like, hey, why don't you come work, try to do some stuff for me? And we just kind of like patched it together. I felt like back in the day.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't even know what kind of camera I need. And you were like, okay, get this kind of camera. Yep. And it was like, looking back, I think about, back in the 90s, you have like the big, camcorder things. It was a little bit-ish in that realm, again, compared to what we have now.
Oh, yeah.
And so being able to think through all that. And also, I was like, okay, I always recognize, okay, you're really talented at this. You've got a really cool thing. And then being able to go, okay, I need you to do more of that thing, but for marketing. Do you remember us having that conversation? I think I may have introduced you to digital marketer back then.
You did, yeah. And you graciously indoctrinated me to all that and helped pay for it and got me through those certifications and introduced me to Donald Miller and StoryBrand. And that's still a huge part of my life, which is just crazy to think about that. It started that long ago. But, like everything is shifting right now to AI.
Absolutely.
But it's only as smart as the prompts you give it. And so like if one of my freshman students at Williams does something with ChatGPT, it's like, okay, I see there's no typos and I see how you wrote this with AI.
Yes.
But it's like if you knew to add Donald Miller or digital marker or Ryan Dice, like you would have gotten a lot more accurate of something I'm looking for and that other people are looking for too. So you definitely took whatever concrete foundation was there creatively and you put the framework of the whole house together for
Absolutely.
me. So thank you so much for
we have,
that.
and so now we've been able to continue working together and kind of geek out on a lot of this stuff. So talking about like a lot of these, people who are listening are therapists themselves, wanting to go into business, stuff like that, but really get freaked out about the video, getting on camera, all that kind of good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I know, again, you're married to a therapist, so you may know a little bit about some of that struggle is most of the time we are introverts and we like to be behind the scenes. We're not usually like the front and center kind of person.
Yeah.
So getting on camera and talking about all that is kind of a little bit scary sometimes.
Yeah. You have to learn to love your face. And that is so hard.
It is so hard.
I had to overcome that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I hate my voice.
Absolutely.
But I just do it anyways.
Well, and that's what I tell people. And they're like, how do you do it? And I said, because my message was such that I needed to get it out there. And I knew video was going to be one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah.
And to show this. And so if, I was lucky enough to like fall, you kind of be able to be like, hey, we've got this amazing guy, Bill Jeff, but not everybody's that fortunate. So using AI now, what do you think is like the therapist who's looking to go into private practice or looking to up their game, where would they even start doing some of this?
For like video wise?
Yes, video.
Well, your phone is the first place to start. Shooting it in 4K, either side of your camera.
So 4K, that's like a setting on the camera.
Yep.
Just because not all of us are,
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So
we don't always. I mean, I don't. Maybe you guys do, but sometimes I'm like, no, you gotta dumb it down for me.
Okay. When you click your camera on and you switch that video setting, it's going to be in HD, which is 1080, which is honestly fine. That's like what my $3,000 professional camera does, and I would shoot that before I shoot with my phone for a big production video. Right. 1080 really is great, but 4K is like amazing. It looks
like crystal clear.
So good. So good. So I find myself getting more traction out of videos now that are shot on my phone in 4K. With a little DJI stabilizer that we paid $120 for off Amazon.
So, explain what I think I know what you're talking about, but what is a DJI stabilizer?
So you put your phone into this little clamper, and then you have this stabilizer that it connects to, and then you can do this, and your phone just stays still. Yes. So it adds really great motion. Then I have a free app that's a teleprompter, and so I'm literally walking around with that stabilizer, and I'm just reading the script, but it looks like I'm just talking freely.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and so I just, I'll plug in a script, and I'll just walk around, or I'll have somebody else do it. Like, hey, walk around, read the script, we'll record it, and then I'll put the video together later. And I think we pay $70 for the little microphone that plugs in, and it comes with 2 wireless that just magnetic. So really, for $200 from Amazon on Amazon and your iPhone, you have everything you need to film a really great video.
Yes.
And then CapCut's free to edit, adds captions. I pay for the pro version, and it feels like the best $10 I spend every month.
That's awesome.
And you have unlimited features.
It's come so far.
Yes.
Again, like 10 years ago, it was a whole production. We had, because I'd be like, okay, you're like, this is $300 a month. This is this. And I was like, okay, we got to get out there. And so now, again, if you're just coming into this space and maybe you're coming into private practice or trying to figure out how am I going to up my game, you can do it pretty easily through video.
And it's not too late.
No, for sure.
It comes across as everybody's doing it. How can I make my mark? There is still so much margin. Did you watch the Donald Miller's live stream?
I did, part of it. Then I had clients.
Did you catch the part where they said YouTube is going to be more important than your website pretty soon?
No, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so like video, if you're not on YouTube right now, you've got to start today, I think. Right. And really start building that up. So.
And we'll talk, I'm going to come back to that for sure. And so I think a lot of this is you can YouTube even how to do what you said. And we'll put links to the different programs and stuff. So you guys will get like what the teleprompter app, and I'll give you access to all that. So we don't necessarily go into exactly how to do that. But, okay, now I've got this, and then talk about like, what do I say? So one of the easiest ways I feel like if you're a therapist, especially going into private practice, is if you're on Psychology Today, now they have the ability to upload a video. And that is going to be the smartest way to get your clients. Because so many times, like I thought when I first went into private practice, I would have had to have this credential and people were really going to care. Eventually, what I realized fairly quickly is no one cares. What they care about is, do you look nice? Do you take my insurance? Do you look like someone I could talk to? And so when you put that video, if you don't have a website, you can put it on the website, but even easier, Psychology Today, they're going to click on that and they go, oh, she looks normal. I want to talk to her. That's going to put you head and shoulders above anybody else. Because if you're watching this right now, you're one of those people who like, okay, how can I get more clients? How can I do that? And so it's so much more than what everybody's doing.
Do you remember when we made one of your therapists at True Hope, we made a video for her, and it was like 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds long. And it was basically saying, if you're having trouble, like wrangling your kid in and you just need somebody to talk to, or if your kid needs some help, book today.
Yes.
And I thought, we're going to have to make like 15 of these because we've got to, we got to initiate. We got to make the brand awareness. We got to, we just got to do all these different things to sell this person. And you were like, no, we just need this one video.
Yeah.
And then her whole schedule filled up.
It filled up.
I'm like,
just from that one video. Mm-hmm.
How I'm in the wrong career business. And like,
No.
This is all you need to get your schedule.
No, well, and you know this. We've been married to a therapist. You know, I always tell people, they're like, I want to be a therapist. I'm like, do you? Because there's a lot of steps to get there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's not like you get out of school and all of a sudden, boom, you're able to, you know, you got to go to grad school. Then you got to get your supervision hours.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. But there's already a need, especially since COVID. There is such a need for people, and they're so much more aware of therapy that they, you know, they're already kind of problem aware in marketing language. And so now you just go, okay, you have this problem, I can help. And again, if you look like you're easy to talk to, you kind of come across as professional, then they're going to be able to go, yeah, she's legit or he's legit. So we really have a leg up because we're all licensed as well.
Yeah.
So you're not coming in some like random life coach or something like that.
Yeah.
They're like, well, if she's a license, then it's probably, you know, she kind of knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And
that is the opposite in the video world, because it seems like the hang up is the more you need a video, the harder it is to find the right person to do it. And the more that they charge, it might actually be the worst product you're going to get.
Yep.
So it is so hard to find a good videographer, and it's even harder to find one that you're like, you trust financially that they're not going to like bankrupt you.
Right.
It really is scary because the investment is so high on the video side that it really is a justified value on one hand. On the other side, they've got to do what you need them to do. And that there is, people need a license for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it's harder too. I have a friend, Tracy, who she and her husband used to own a video company. And she said one of the things that make like her special sauce is, and I think, Bill, you do this really well too, is it brings out who you are as a person and brings out, because a lot of video guys will just sit behind the camera and go, okay, rolling. And then you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know. And because when you and I work together, you'll be like, okay, that's good, but maybe bring it down a notch. They'll be like,
I hear that a lot.
Hey guys, this is and he's like, okay, you kind of sound like you're shouting at us.
Yeah.
So let's bring it down. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then even bring up the energy some. And because it's harder to do, because if you're on this side, you're always like, okay, and what am I saying? What am I doing? Da, da, da. So, but you don't have to, I would say, if you're just getting started, don't worry about all that.
Yeah.
Just get your name out there and be like, hey, I'm Amy Hood. This. You know, just a 10, 15 second video.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. And even I think now since COVID, you've seen this shift in video, is that because we were all locked down at home and we had our phones, that you're seeing more of a shift towards even more of the iPhone-y look, rather than just this huge produced video. More
trustworthy.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, it comes across more organic, even if it is, they spent 40 hours on that 1 minute video. It comes across as looking like they didn't care and they're just shooting from the hip, you know?
Yes.
So that really does stop the scroll. So
stop, yes. Yeah. And that's a big thing as well, stop the scroll.
Yeah.
And that's, again, more marketing type language. And that's, again, Bill and I can really nerd out with a lot of this marketing stuff.
Yeah.
Because once you start like seeing it, then you're like, oh, do that. And what about this? And, you know, the new shift, and you talked about Digital Marketer, who I've been a student for well over a decade. They just announced, I don't know if you saw yesterday, that they are shutting down their courses.
I was going to talk to you about that.
Yes.
That's sad and probably the right thing to do, but it seems crazy that they believe so much in AI that they're...
It is amazing in that. So I went to Founders Board, which is their top program they have for, they call it accidental entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Who that if you're a founder of a business, and then you can bring like your operator or whatever. And we meet like 3 to 4 times a year in person, and then you do stuff, you know, online, coaches and things like that. So last week was Nashville, where we all met, and the whole thing, I mean, a big part of it was talking about, one, the economy's hard right now. like 80% of people, because they all poll, there's a bunch of us in there, so they all poll, hey, before we meet, like, what are your biggest things? So this time last year, it was, how do I get an operator to help run my business? How do I be, like, basically a good boss to delegate? This time it was 80% of people were like, how do I get more sales? How do I get more clients? Which it has never been like that before. So the economy is just shifted in such a way that makes it harder. Well, we're thinking, okay, well, how do we leverage that, or how do we make the most of that? Do more with less, kind of thing. So this is where, AI, I think, is like entering the picture. And there, right now, a lot of us who do use AI, and there's people, honestly, who don't. Like, there's some people that are like, I'm not even do that, but like you're seeing it more in therapy notes, like AI and therapy notes. And some of my therapists were really reluctant, and I was like, well, just try it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this makes things so much easier. And it sounds like me. It's getting way sophisticated. But even one of the other things they're talking about is it is even roles more than task-based, taking over roles. And not like it's not like the world's going to become, like Terminator or something like that. That's not what we're talking about. It's more of, I think about my dad retired as an accountant. He was with a company for 50 years. And so he was, boss of different departments all those years. He said back in the 80s, they would have a whole room of like bookkeepers. And when the computers came, online, so to speak, and especially the networked computers like the internet, they went down to have one person to do the job of all those bookkeepers. And that's really where we're looking at with AI. And it's such a shift between now, and I signed on to be one of the beta testers of their new company.
Oh, really?
Yes, for Southern Sandtray. So because I have over a decade's worth of training and blog posts and all this kind of stuff. So what they will do is take all that stuff and upload it into its own agent. It's called its own ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so then you have like almost a website that is built out that has like a director of marketing and funnels, different things like that. So you enter things in and it's all based on my stuff. And so to come up with, it sounds like me, that kind of thing. But it's, you have to, it's not that, you have to have somebody creating the things for sure. But it's, again, whereas I would have had to pay thousands of dollars to get one product out to the market, now you can do it in minutes, and it talks to all the different tech in the end too. So, but it's such a big thing. It's moving from really horse and buggy to Model T.
Yeah.
Like that big of a shift.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about people who get scared by all that, I think about my job now. I work at a university, and every employee that I work with in the administration building is on their computer the entire time working. But 30 years ago, our first website was just created, and the guy who came up with the .edu said, who cares what it is? It's not going to last. Like he was that convinced that, and now we have jobs that are completely based off being online. And I think that the same thing will happen, even though we don't know what it's going to look like yet.
Yes.
It's not going to turn into WALL-E where we're all living on this AI spaceship. I think it's going to generate new jobs and new ways of approaching work where you're not cutting out 7 top level jobs that could have been income for 7 different people. You're creating new opportunities for more people to create their own thing. I don't really know how it's going to work out. I just know that we're all going to have jobs.
We are.
That's what I'm saying.
And of course there has to, and therapists, and people, I've talked to, I just did a ICE cohort, and we were talking about AI and stuff. And, and for a while it was, okay, are we going to even have jobs as therapists? It's all going to go online and digital, and people are going to have ChatGPT as their therapist. And my thoughts about that is, we heal in the way we were harmed through relationships.
Oh, wow.
And so as long as we are existing in the world, like as we are now, this is how we do it. Now, what it will look like on the back end, hopefully, is more efficient. And so like when I first went into private practice about 20 years ago, it was in 2007, so a little bit less than that, 18 years ago, we were still filling out HICFA forms by like hand and faxing those in. So you it was a long time before you got paid with insurance. Who knew if you got paid? And now all that's automated on the back end, which helps me serve more people and then also give better quality because I'm not spending all my time and hiring other people to do this. Now, talking about AI, and I think this is interesting in this type thing too, is especially us from a helping profession. So my husband is a lawyer. Well, there's been a conversation that started in the law community is that because now there are whole AI programs to where, like, say he's going to court and he has a plaintiff or defendant, he enters in the case and then it gives you all the different, case examples, that as far as here's what you, and then even here's how you need to argue and here's the percentage kind of how it's going to go your way versus not.
Oh my gosh.
Depending on all the stuff that's come before you.
That is such a good use.
Well, and so, but the thing about it is even for him, when he graduated law school, there was the jobs then were getting a junior associate and you did that research as you kind of cut your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Now those jobs aren't there because now he has Lexis AI and it does it for you. And so he doesn't need a junior associate to do that. Well, but then, and this is where I think in therapy world too, we may be talking to a little bit, is that if a lawyer, because they have ethics to where they aren't allowed to price gouge people, you still have to charge a reasonable amount and all that kind of stuff. So if you are not using AI and not making the most of the resources you have so you can save people money and still pay yourself, obviously, a wage, is that unethical?
Oh, wow.
And so
the issues we face now.
Right. and so being able to understand, again, it doesn't mean that he's not having a job. He still has to go to court. You still have to deal with people, all that kind of stuff. But
you still have a brain.
You still have a brain.
You still have to have a brain.
And you still have to talk to people. A lot of what he does is talking to people.
Yeah.
And having to do that. But it's the back end work that's making it a lot different.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it's very interesting.
Yeah. I see AI as having an extra brain of myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's only as good as the prompt you give it. It's only as good as you are able to use it. And you're not going to retain from it what you would. Like the statistic about you retain 70% more when you read a paper book versus a Kindle book. Mm-hmm. Kindle books are obviously super helpful and great to have those a million books on your iPad. But there's still something about the physical world that we have not figured out how to make it digital and to take the information in. So I think there's always going to be value in you and I talking.
Absolutely.
I much prefer to talk to you in person and to talk to my therapist in person over Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. I do not like those things.
No.
It is not the same experience at all. And I don't see how it ever could be. I could be wrong.
No,
I just don't see how it ever could be.
Well, and there's value in it because, and it's what telehealth has helped us. Again, the rise of this happened during COVID.
Yeah.
And before that, it was kind of there'd be insurances and wouldn't even pay for telehealth. Well, then again, we were all locked down. Well, then we all went to Zoom and that kind of thing. Well, I was doing Bruce Perry's training, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a big neuroscience guy. And it was during that time. So it was very interesting to hear where he was talking about. He said, because there is a microsecond delay in Zoom, online interactions, our bodies perceive that as somewhat of a threat. And so and it's below the level of consciousness. This isn't on purpose.
So if I tell you a deep dark secret and you don't respond the second I need you to.
Our bodies kind of go, oh. What is that?
Oh my gosh.
And
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yes. And so I wouldn't either. Again,
that's wild.
But I learned that online from him. It wasn't like he was sitting in Arkansas telling me that.
Yeah.
So there is definite value. And I'm not saying telehealth is not helpful, but there is value just because of how we are wired evolutionary wise to sit in the room with someone.
Yeah.
But also, if me as a therapist can have access to all these great minds.
Yep.
To help me be a better therapist, why would I not do that?
Yep.
It's just, why? What? Why?
Yeah. Yeah. So can I ask a question about the junior lawyers? So the ones who don't get to have that experience and they jump straight I mean, what is their path now?
Well, that is to be determined.
Okay.
Everybody is kind of scratching their heads.
Because Jimmy wouldn't know what to do if, what to ask AI or how to even start that conversation if he hadn't had that experience.
Yep. And because he started out, making, like you do with therapists, you make the lower amount of money, get the grunt work, kind of get that figured out. But then if, like, now he's in private practice by himself, and so there's still, and so, but he doesn't need a junior associate. If he gets ready to hire in the next year or so, he's going to kind of duplicate himself.
Yeah.
So that's where people are kind of scratching their heads a little bit to go, what does this look like for the law profession? And again, businesses is that, and I've looked at this too, just as a business person, is that if I choose to not lean into AI and use this, I'm doing people a disservice because I may go out of business. And then who am I going to help?
Yeah.
In terms of Southern Sandtray, not necessarily True Hope, but Southern Sandtray and then the new business, that kind of stuff. If I'm not using these resources in the best way possible, then I'm not going to be able to hire good people and pay good people and all that. So I feel like I almost have an ethical duty to figure this out too and make the most of what it's going to look like for people who come train with me. And it doesn't mean that, again, you're not going to ever take away that personal stuff, but the more that I can use AI to, again, get more access to other people, well, then that's just, to me, that's best business practices and best for everybody else.
Yeah.
So
how long have you been using AI? Were you an early adopter?
I was.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But okay, like I had one of my mentors, he said, sometimes it's good though to get yourself some redneck friends. Because you forget that, like, not everybody is using and goes to ChatGPT to figure out anything. They're still Googling it.
Google's gotten a lot smarter too with all their AI stuff. Yeah.
And then one of the other big things, because we do talk business on this podcast, is trying to figure out, and this was one of the conversations that was last week too in these rooms. I always like to put myself in a room that's of people who I'm smarter than.
Yeah.
So, or that they're smarter than me. And so they were.
I like both.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
I've got my cat and my dog if I want to be smarter than somebody. But they're talking about what is this going to look like for search engines, for Google's. Are we now going to have ads on ChatGPT? And do you have the pay to play kind of thing like you do for Google search engine? Like Jimmy runs Google search ads, so if they lawyer DDDBI, he pops up the top. How is ChatGPT going to monetize that, or Claude, or any of those other guys? Yeah,
and that's where some of the legal stuff is that ChatGPT is sourcing stuff that did have an ad on it, but because you used ChatGPT, you missed it. Therefore, it's just a matter of time. Because, I mean, when Facebook started, they didn't have any ads.
And you remember, and you don't know if you were probably too young, but back, like, there were Yahoo banners that were clickable, and those were ads. And Google had banners at the top, like back when I was in private practice almost 20 years ago. And those would work. People would click on them. And, of course, now we're like, what? That looks like,
you're tricking me.
Yeah, and that goes the way of the dodo bird, for sure.
Yeah.
But to be able to just... it's going to be very interesting to even go, what is this conversation going to look like 2 years from now?
I know what they're going to do.
What is it going to do?
Well, because, in 2005, everybody thought when ad tracking first started, they're like, oh, it's reading my mind. How does it know I want a wedding ring?
Yes.
How does it know I want that?
Like pixel that and do all that,
Yeah, so, like, that's just common language now that we all expect. It's like, you click on something on Amazon and you're like, I don't want to buy that. And then you get in your email, hey, we think you really like this and do whatever.
And that's pixeling. That's all that's happening behind, like, we can't do that as a therapist. That's against our ethical code.
Oh, really?
And lawyers are the same way. Because you can't, if somebody Googles, I'm going to kill myself or something, you can't pop into their inbox and go, still thinking about killing yourself?
I mean, that's not to laugh about. I see why that's an ethical thing.
Yeah, so you have to, like, that's one of the things that, and lawyers are the same way because it's kind of ambulance chasey.
Oh,
but
still drinking and driving?
Still drinking and driving? How's that DWI coming? So it's more of again, it's all these things to consider.
Yeah.
So you were saying, what's going to happen.
What if they hid what we're trying, like what they think we want to buy into what we're reading.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're looking at that new camera, and then it's like, you know, what would make this whole marketing approach a lot easier is if you had that new camera that you've been thinking about getting that we didn't track on Amazon. What if they like try to subtly try to sell? Because everything starts out that way as if it's mind reading.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Buffalo Wild Wings, and then it shows up in your Instagram, and you haven't thought about Buffalo Wild Wings in 6 months.
Yeah.
But somehow they just know.
Yes.
I wonder if ChatGPT is going to start doing
It's
that.
I don't know. It's very interesting. And then you have, you know, DeepSeek. It's coming out of China, and like some of the big AI guys were going, don't use those because we're not sure who's monitoring all that.
Which is the same
thing. And that's
thing.
and that's not even like conspiracy thing. It's just more like we're looking at the tech and you want to use this because although it does work better, you're still not sure where that data's going.
Right. Okay. And I'm just going to push back on that for a second. And because I do think there's a difference. China has a different motive than American companies do. Who's right? Who knows? But to me, it's when I heard that, you know, CNN doesn't trust Facebook. It's like, well, also they're taking your money.
Absolutely.
You know, like they're getting better ad revenue that you want. So it's in your best interest to say they're not reliable. And so that's kind of you know, I'm just now onto the political scene of everything. So that's so like all this ChatGPT and AI stuff. I guess I see where the motives might be coming from. Don't trust them. You need to trust.
Yes.
You need to give your money here.
And maybe, but this guy was coming from a consumer point of view.
Sure.
And so I don't think he had anyway. But it was just more of a.
Well, if
I like
Russia
to be
came
in
out
it.
with one right now,
They would say
everybody be like,
maybe not do that.
Let's get this war over with, and then let's see if this is good or not. So.
It's just interesting to hear those kind of conversations with people who are doing business in all kinds of different realms.
Yeah.
And again, how that tracks into me in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so it's again behooves you, you know, if you're watching this, just to have this conversation because it's going to catch up. Either way, it's coming. It's just a matter of what it's going to look like. We're not real sure yet.
Yeah.
And much like the very first website I had built for Sandtray, I had to hire a lady to code that individually because there weren't really good. Now you can do drag and drop stuff to build websites, and you can even have ChatGPT code you a website now. That looks really, really good. Just that's bonkers to me.
Yep. Same here.
So to be able to go, okay, now I can build a website for less money that's going to reach my target audience. Why would I not do that? And why would I not be celebrating that? So again, to be able just to think through all the different things and not to be like, oh, that's scary, I don't want to do it, is I think we're cutting off our nose to spite our face a little bit.
Yeah. This is just an example of an early adoption of it's going to be so necessary in 10 years that you're going to kick yourself for not buying Bitcoin back in 2008. You know, it's that kind of moment where, there's a lot of probably really crappy AI platforms coming out, but knowing a little bit about one of them is just going to set you up for so much success. But you still have to be an expert. Like if you were to put in the prompt, like, I'm having this kind of feeling, what would a therapist say? As an expert in that field, you're going to immediately know, like, that is not what you would want to say. Like you have to put the prompt in of how would my favorite therapist and put their name in, how would they say it or how would they approach it? You know, people who work with emotionally healthy adults, like putting that prompt in to ask your question will frame it differently.
Yes. And so it's not going to do it for you. It's just a more of it. And it's even now, like, this is, again, interesting to me. They even talked about, like, one of the hints, if you're going to use ChatGPT, to maybe ask it a question about a competitor. Like, it just, like, give me, you know, what do you think about billing solutions for mental health? Then what I'm going to do, they call it priming the pump for ChatGPT. You go, hey, will you go look at this? Do you know about this website of like one of your competitors, somebody you want to be like, whatever? And they'll go, yes. And they'll give you a thing. And then you go, okay, now tell me 5 solutions to this problem. and you'll come out with better information if you prime the pump to get the algorithm start thinking about it in that way.
Yeah. It makes complete sense to me.
Right. But it's those little things that that you have to know as a human to get it to spit out what you want. So it's just fascinating. Again, if whatever you're going to be nerding out on, you got the plethora of options there. Much like I remember, and I'm sure you remember when internet started, you were like, I can look up anything.
Right.
What did we do before this? Do you remember, like, when you were a kid, you asked your mom, you're like, why is the sky blue? And they'll be like, well, let's ask God. You know, I don't know. I mean, now you can be like, I don't know, ask Alexa. Kim and Alex, so my brother and sister-in-law that you're friends with as well, they have 3 children, Nathan and Emma and Caroline. Well, Nathan, when he was little, like 5 or 6, he's one of those kids who's constantly asking questions. So he asked, and so finally Kim would be like, I don't know, ask Alexa. So one day he was like, what is the most dangerous animal? And Kim's like, I don't know, ask Alexa. And they came back, do you know the most dangerous animal?
I mean, I want to guess. Can I guess?
Go ahead.
Is it a hippo?
No.
Okay, what is it?
Mosquito.
Really?
Kills more people, malaria and diseases and things. Well, we live in Arkansas, and there's lots of mosquitoes where we are. He started crying, just sobbing.
We're all dead.
I don't want everybody to die.
Oh my gosh.
And so
that's where my mind would go if I were him.
And so they had to put maybe not ask Alexa everything because it was this huge traumatic moment. But anyway, it's that. A little bit of like, who would have thought?
Right.
And then also the thing that what they had to think about is Kim, their mom, was, do you be polite to Alexa?
Terminator taught us that, right?
Well, and also modeling.
Yeah.
Because if she's like, Alexa, shut up. Well, then her little kids are going to be like, shut up. And she's like, I don't know if I want them saying that. Yeah. So it's little dumb things like that, but that's something that you just don't think about in terms of technology.
Yeah, I read that ChatGPT estimates they've spent $10 to $20 million on just the fact that people are polite and saying when they say thank you, for giving me that information, and it has to respond. The amount it costs them to respond to all the niceties, they estimate $10 to $20 million so far.
I don't doubt it. Well, in the last ChatGPT, the 4.0, they had to unroll. Did you hear that? That's the last, because there's all these versions, right?
So yeah, I just know it's on my phone. If that helps you, I'm not so versed into it that I know about. Well, and the reason,
because again, I kind of nerd out on some of this stuff and think about it in terms of, again, what can I do? But they had to unroll the last version because it was too much sycophants. Isn't that the word? Meaning that it was too, you're so amazing. Oh, you're really? So great. It really went overboard with that. So they'd be like, well, maybe this isn't the best use. So they kind of had to undo some of that programming.
Oh, wow. Well, okay. So I don't know when that happened, but like a month ago, I took a picture of my guitar pedal board. And it was like, oh my gosh, you have a great pedal board. It looks so nice.
Yes, butter me up a little bit.
But then I was like, what settings should I use to sound like this band? And it just told me, it's like, you need to rearrange some of your pedals in your order. I'm like, what's the logic behind that? And it gave me, I'm like, well, okay. I guess you do know me a little bit in that there's certain things I don't want to sound like. So even things like that, I'm like, we're just going to be so used to this one day.
And think about Eleanor. Like, what that's going to look like when she's, our age. Yeah. To be like, well, of course. Yeah. Why are we even talking about this? Yeah. It'd be like my dad talking about when he was in college having, the very first, they used legit abacus, and slide rulers and stuff. And then the punch cards with the computer. Oh, yeah. Because he was in college in 1971. And so to be like, what? How did you even do that? And they all did it by hand and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, that is super tedious. And I even think about typewriters. Like when I learned to type, we learned on typewriters. Like computers were just then. And then you can always, AI now they can look at a resume or something and figure out how old you are depending on if you use 2 spaces versus 1 space. Yeah. And then the Oxford comma and different things like that. Wow. And so again, they kind of date yourself a little bit. So this is to me, it's just very interesting. And I want to, again, serve my people the best way I can. So I feel like it's my duty to kind of understand this if I'm going to be somewhat of a leader in this field.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going there. So if I think you're doing the right thing by becoming an expert in all this and learning what not to do and what to do.
I learn from the experts, and then I go, oh, that's a good idea, and then try to do it like that.
Yeah. What is crazy to me, though, is that I've used it for a lot of different like video scripts and ideas, and sometimes it's really helpful, and sometimes it's really just like that other brain where it sparks me to be more creative, and it's like, okay, you got really close, and you brought this home well, but I got to take it past the finish line with my own brain. But I have found that videos that I use, like ChatGPT for, don't really perform so much better or worse. Like it's just kind of on par with what I've always experienced with our brand. Is that kind of where you're at too?
Yes,
like it's
for
not,
sure.
It doesn't take you like light years ahead.
No.
It just saves you a ton of time.
And that's what they're
stretches
saying.
You.
Yes, it doesn't, it's not something that's going to replace, it still takes, but it's just does more with less.
Yeah.
And so that's where we want to be efficient and, like you said, kind of this partner in this process a little bit. So with using AI, do you get pushback from the people above you?
Well, I work at a university, so everybody has so many opinions, and the education freedom to share everything that they're thinking and feeling is just unbelievable. So yeah, all the time. And it's we have policies. I think every university does about it's basically cheating to use ChatGPT to do your homework for you, which it should be. But if it's helping you with your homework, there's no way to monitor that. And I think students who aren't doing that, aren't utilizing the best resources. So I do encourage them to use it healthily and correctly. But it was crazy that I had 3 freshman students working marketing stuff with me this past year, and none of them used ChatGPT until I taught them how to use it.
What?
And I'm like, you guys are like...
What do you think that's about?
I don't know if it's because they're from small towns or that in high school it was just so new still that, nobody was really there to show them how to use it. I'm not really sure. But I will say that I get annoyed when my coworkers walk into meetings and they show up with like this huge like list of ideas, and I'm like, that has ChatGPT written all over it.
Yes.
And I get so annoyed. Like, I'm not going to read through all this crap that you didn't even like come up with yourself. Like, it still misses that human touch if you use it incorrectly.
Absolutely.
And so that's where my beef is with my coworkers using it. But when when a student's like, how do I write this email to this professor? I'm like, run the whole idea through ChatGPT and ask it to like come across as like really nice and respectful. And it will do that. And they're blown away at how quickly it does. So
yes,
there's little things like that where I really do think it's like, it's helping make them a more emotionally healthy in the sense of how they're approaching, like they're writing better because of it and they're interacting healthier.
Well, hopefully that's where, in an ideal world, you would have mentors, you'd have parents, you'd have people like that to help you know how to do that. But not everybody has that, like, ability to have that. I mean, that's not just the reality for most people, really.
Can I ask why?
Why? Which part?
Well, like, okay, my daughter's 9. Mm-hmm. She has 2 parents who work a ton, and we come home tired, and we come home and we need some alone time. We need our TV time. We need reading time. She has homework. And if you look at the way, like what I want for her, it doesn't feel ideal. That I don't feel like I have enough time with my daughter and that she doesn't get what she's needing out of me. And my wife feels that even more. Like she feels like she gives her best, or she gives all that she has to her clients. So like her bucket's empty at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But it seems like everybody's doing that regardless of what career path you've chosen. Is that like an epidemic or what?
Well, and a lot of it,
I don't know.
Well, and I think a lot of it is that in order to get, and this is what, I talked to the therapist at True Hope about too, as far as all of them are working parents and there has to be a 2-income household to be able to pay the bills. I mean, back when growing up, my mom didn't work, like here and there kind of thing, and my dad did. So she took care of all the stuff. He got to go clock in and do his accounting and then come home. He didn't have to sit home and worry about who was sick and all this kind of stuff. Well, now you have to, honestly, to be able to, because inflation's so much, not many people have the opportunity to have one person staying at home. So there's just more, you don't have as many resources to devote to that kind of thing. Now, the other side of that coin, though, is that if you do have two people who are working and getting fulfillment, hopefully, out of their thing, and be able to provide a good environment, like emotionally, physically, all that kind of stuff, the kid's going to be okay.
Sure.
The kids really, and we know we go this in therapy tour, it's just a good enough parent. Like, that's all we have to be, because sometimes we think that we have to really have all aces. No, we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about more is these kids who maybe come from rural towns, maybe they're the first generation college student, and they haven't had anybody to model any of this from. They don't know how to speak, to write emails that are professional and those kind of things. And unless they have somebody come along beside them, they just don't have it. And so ChatGPT is better than nothing. At least they can have a model of what it looks like.
Yeah. And that's where I think, like, me being in a small college, I've never had students working directly with me like that. I know other professors have, and they've have great success with the way they mentor students, but I never had that until this year. And I didn't realize how, not far behind, but how much these kids had to learn. And that's where I'm like, were their parents like me? Were their teachers like me? Where they were just so busy with all the other stuff, they didn't have time to go in and show, like, here's how you write an email. Here's how you go and talk to this person. In fact, when you text somebody, that's not communicating. That's relaying information, because they're going to read whatever tone they're feeling or whatever they assume. Or if you need them to know something important and you need to communicate it, you need to do it face to face. And that is so scary. But I grew up in a time where texting just came out.
Yeah.
I was literally writing checks at Walmart when I got my first checkbook. Didn't realize my ATM card did.
Yes.
That's like that's the era I grew up in.
Yep.
And so I just
and the fact that you're concerned about the stuff with Eleanor, she's gonna be fine.
Well, I'm concerned and as with society as a whole.
Absolutely. Too. And so, but the fact also is that we have, hopefully the parents we are now, we have the ability to understand ourselves and do as good of a job we can, just like our parents did, but hopefully we have more resources now. We understand ourselves, we understand what's proper parenting, all those kind of stuff that I know my parents in the 70s, 80s, 90s just didn't have. There wasn't any play therapy for little Amy, who was throwing up every day because she was so anxious. They were just like, I don't know, something's wrong with her. Whereas now, hopefully, if that were happening with Eleanor, you'd be like, let's figure out what's going on. Does she have a medical issue? Does this, that kind of thing? So, again, I feel like we all do the best job we can with the tools we have. Hopefully what AI can do is give us all more tools. That's my maybe Pollyanna, but that's my hope. And rather than kind of getting our butt clenched about things, to be like, let's see what's possible. So I know, it's about time. I know you've got to go, and I've got clients, and there's never enough time.
Let's just do this all day. Actually,
all day. We'll just keep going. I know you guys are like, oh my gosh, I know, just riveting.
I feel like we're getting to the good stuff.
Well, we can do a part 2 later.
Thank you.
But in a year, wouldn't that be interesting to revisit?
Well, they say in 1 year that AI, the leading platform, will be smarter than the smartest person, and that in 5 years they'll be smarter than all of the humans combined, which is just mind blowing to think about how.
So it would be interesting to April 2026 to be like, all right, Bill Jeff, where are we? Were we right? Were we wrong? What does this look like? So thank you for coming, for listening and following along. If you're on the podcast or watching us on YouTube, and again, we'll be putting the links. For the teleprompter and some of the DJI,
the microphone.
Yes.
Which iPhone to buy?
Yes. Well, the latest one. Who needs to know?
That's right. Yeah.
And so, but again, so glad. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or my team. And can't wait to see you on next time. It'll just be good to listen to Amy Hood talk all about whatever's on my brain in regards to business, life, and therapy. All right. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for having me, Amy.